All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard, Monday, August 5th. And do we have a show for you? These are the days that remind me why I wanted to do this job in the first place. You feel lucky every day to be covering the NFL, to be covering the New York Giants, to be writing and talking about them in the New York Daily News, on television. Did the Carton show recently. That was a blast. And of course, on this Talking Ball with Pat Leonard podcast and on these fan lives that continue to grow due to your passion and support. But out there on the field in East Rutherford, I watched a Dan Campbell team and a Brian Daboll team go at it like I've never seen teams practice before. We've seen fights in joint practices. I've even seen Daniel Jones jump into the fray. So we've asked these questions before of number 8 in the red non-contact jersey. Why do you throw yourself in there? Why do you continue to subject yourself to potential hits after the play in the fray, defending teammates when really that should be an offensive lineman's job, as Brian Burns put so well after this fight-filled practice with melees, brawls, scuffles, punches, haymakers, you name it. Dan Campbell's team, 5 hours on the tarmac on the runway in Detroit on Sunday night, waiting to get out with Newark Airport closed due to weather. They get in late. They get a quick night's sleep. They arrive at practice just before they have to walk out on the field. The media, we were there waiting to talk to Brian Daboll before the Lions even got into their locker room. So they were still walking out on the field as we were waiting for players to start stretching and for the whole session to begin. So they were ornery. And on the other end, even though Brian Daboll was saying it's just practice and we're looking to get good work in, the Giants players, we find out afterwards, there was a lot of conversation about showing aggression, being a team that, can stand up for themselves, make our mark, is how Deonte Banks put it. And boy, did they ever. It wasn't perfect, but what they did is they stood up to the Detroit Lions physically. And this is a Super Bowl contending team. This is a Lions team that is among the more talented rosters in football. Aiden Hutchinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, Penei Sewell, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, who wasn't on the field for this particular practice. But the Lions are a team to be reckoned with. And the Giants, remember, going to Allen Park, Michigan, and the Lions essentially wiped the floor with them the first day. They hit them in the mouth. The Giants didn't know what had hit them. As Nick McLeod said, that last year they came out flat and they were lackadaisical. So they were ready to go this time. Combine the Giants being ready and being aggressive with the Lions being ornery and a hot, humid August day in northern New Jersey. And what you got is a powder keg ready to explode. That's exactly what happened. We even saw Brian Daboll yelling, first of all, at one of the Lions defensive linemen for slapping at Daniel Jones' hand and getting the ball, even though you're not supposed to contact the quarterback. We saw a huge hit on Eric Gray by Lions defensive back Maurice Norris. We saw Drew Phillips, the rookie, get into it with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, starting essentially the first brawl of the day on the defense's side, which was right in front of the fans, got it going. There was a buzz to this practice, to this day, that we haven't seen in East Rutherford, frankly, in a long while, in a long time. Like I said, it wasn't perfect, right? Jameson Williams scored a couple of touchdowns. The Lions also got behind the Giants defense a third time for a deep touchdown. Daniel Jones, though, with his first string offensive line, that was the field I watched the closest all day. They held their own. That, there were some pressures. There were times where the Lions would have gotten to Jones if it was live, but he was accurate and precise in 7-on-7. And then when it was time for the D-line and the Giants O-line to face up, that was where the practices all fell apart a year ago in Detroit. And that's where the Giants line, even if they won some and lost some battles, they really bought Daniel Jones enough time to make throws, including a deep one to Malik Neighbors, that even though it was ruled out of bounds, Neighbors and Jones and the Giants knew that they had found something. They knew that it was the type of connection that they would like to see and test out against another opponent. They see it completed, and Neighbors stares down the Lions sideline for a good 15 to 20 seconds after that. So thanks for being here, everybody. I'm going to get to your questions shortly. First, want to tell you about Boom Chaga. Talking Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by the Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on our screen right here, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. We are also brought to you by BetOnline, which is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and get on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE to get your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here. And also brought to you, as you know, by Estate 98 Coffee, an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar that is convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents like myself. It takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced coffee, not kidding about that, and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte from this all-natural concentrate. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. Estate 98 Coffee. And we start with Barbara Carroll. She says, I heard the Giants on a whole look good, including dimes. The Giants look good. Daniel Jones looked good. And most importantly, Daniel Jones had a beard. Daniel Jones is back. The aura is here. It surrounds him. When Daniel Jones wears the beard, good things happen to the Giants. Just telling you right now. I don't know why. I can't explain it. But there's an energy about this beard. Daniel Jones, keep the beard. Telling you right now. Tuto says a good example for us all here with a $5 super chat. Tuto Azuri, one of our diehards here, biggest supporters here on the Talkin Ball network and the Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard podcast. Tuto, really appreciate you always supporting us. And just so you know, guys, if you purchase a super chat or super sticker like Tuto just did, your comment or question will be elevated to the top of the chat, and I will address it immediately or answer it immediately. Question, comment, whatever it is. So Tuto says, respect to Big Pat and all diehard Giants fans across the pond. Greetings from our entire team in Italy. Our season opener is August 16th, 6 a.m. Eastern, Sky Sports Rugby, pay-per-view live. See the Giants and Lions, prime time, Tuto in prime time. This is what we're doing here on Talkin Ball Live. Tuto, thank you so much. Everybody bookmark that date and time. August 16th, 6 a.m. Eastern, Sky Sports Rugby pay-per-view live. Have to support each other. Tuto, you're the best. G-Men says, Pat, seems like you were in for a treat this practice. Other members on the beat have said this practice was the most intense they have ever seen. Can you say the same thing from your perspective? Yes, I can, G-Men, because it was a combination of intensity, playmaking, guys going over the line and crossing the line, coaches getting involved, like Brian Daboll yelling at the Lions defensive lineman for hitting Daniel Jones's hand. And then later, the Giants had hit some passes downfield. Then there were some pass breakups or incompletions downfield, and the Lions were starting to chirp. And Brian Daboll was loudly urging his team and his offense to continue to throw the ball deep. You know, trash talk essentially coming from the Giants head coach. Remember, this is a head coach whose game day personality and his outbursts and his game day demeanor was a detriment to the team last year and cost him in a lot of ways. But you also want to see the team have intensity up to a certain point and of course, be competitive and stand up to the best teams in the league. So you have to toe that line, but you also have to walk up to it. So the Giants did that a lot today. Joe Shane even ended up on the field, the Giants general manager, trying to break up the final brawl of the day. Wouldn't recommend that, Joe. I know you mean well, and no one else was doing it, but the Giants need you to keep working the phones. If you want to put some pads on, at least, in a helmet before you walk out there next time, I think that would be advised and advisable. But yes, G-Man, I think, it wasn't just the most intense practice, though. It was also, it's been a while around here since we've been able to hang out our hat on something truly not just encouraging is one word, but also something to build on, right? Like a foundation to set or an identity to be able to look back on. And, I continue to say on our Talkin Ball Live podcast that I believe the way the Giants start this season is going to define their season, because even though it is a long NFL year, this Giants team, within in the personality of its head coach, these first 2 years has started fast and made the playoffs and started slow and hit the skids. And there hasn't been a middle ground, really, right? As far as what the beginning of the season tells us about how they're going to go. And last year we saw signs in August that the Giants weren't ready to play. They were giving guys rest days all over the place. They weren't practicing very hard. They went to Detroit and got thumped on the first day before, kind of evening it out on day 2, but still losing the week. If you remember that week, Darren Waller, who was voted a captain on that Giants team, ended up standing up and talking to the Giants and stressing to them that they needed to come out on the second day and really put a better foot forward. So a player who basically had one of his feet out the door towards retirement had to stand up in front of the room last year and tell the team it wasn't good enough, right? So that was all laying the foundation and kind of the breadcrumbs up to that Dallas blowout. So now, conversely, you have to give the Giants credit for, again, the Lions made some plays. There were some successful things Detroit did on the day too. And as we sit here now, we're talking before the second joint practice and before the Giants and Lions face off in their preseason opener. So there's still more football for the week. But as we sit here now, after this first practice, you have to be able to hang your hat and you have to give the Giants credit for standing up to this team and going toe to toe with them. Also, though, it was instructive, G-Men, that Drew Phillips, which clearly this message came from some of the veteran players and also from the staff. He said basically the message afterwards was, yeah, we wanted to stand up for ourselves and we have to if someone's going to come after us, but we don't want that to be us. That's not us. He said, he even said it was a little embarrassing on his part how often he lost his cool and got red hot. And so that message was clearly trickling down from the top that the Giants do like the fire, but they only want it to go so far because they know it's going to cost them if they're playing that way come the regular season. But there were players like Jack Campbell on the Detroit Lions, an absolute maniac on the field. I mean, there was one, it almost started a huge fight where long after the play, he just punched really hard at Isaiah Hodgins at the ball and at his hand as Hodgins was way down the field, kind of jogging out the rest of a play, and Hodgins shoved him and it nearly started a fight. So there were some big hits. There was some, shoving. And then there were just plays like that where there was just an instigator here, an instigator there. The play where Daniel Jones got involved was, I think it might have been Campbell. I couldn't tell because his jersey was basically being ripped off of him by Greg Van Roten. But Van Roten, the Giants, who is, by the way, is the Giants center right now with John Michael Schmidt's not, on the side. I mean, Van Roten is their center. Like it's not like a rotation. He's their center. Van Roten was on his back on the ground, and this Lion, who I think was Campbell, I'm not positive, was on top of him, kind of giving him a shove. And then Van Roten grabbed his face mask and pulled him down. And then that guy and another Lion were going after Van Roten. And then Jones rushed over on top of both of them and gave this guy a 2-hand shove and like jumped in. And there were people there were like multiple Giant staffers jumped into the middle and were just dragging Daniel Jones out of the pile. He is speaking of maniacs, Daniel. I mean, you got to love it though. Like he really is a gamer. I mean, you going into an alleyway with four guys, right? To for all the marbles, like you're taking Daniel Jones with you, man. He's no joke. G-Men also says there are a lot of positives on both sides of the ball today. One disappointment for me seems to be Cordell Flott. He has his moments, but losing receivers in the open field, like Jamison Williams, for wide open touchdowns can cause the Giants to lose games when it really counts. Could you see the Giants quietly look at the free agent market for a veteran corner? Yeah, G-Men. So I haven't written this story yet, but there's a lot to it. But Shane Bowen, he said he had a quote the other day where he basically said this about the second corner spot and their secondary room. He said, we signed a corner a week ago. We claimed a corner yesterday, and we'll probably sign another corner in October. He said, we're probably going to be having this conversation all year. It's just how it's going to go. That has to scare you. He admitted even that Flott was playing a lot on the outside, not because he was definitely the guy, but because they were trying to give him every opportunity to be the guy, and they were trying to give him ample reps there in order to show that he could do it. So it's essentially a trial and a development program there. And you have to think at the moment, Nick McLeod is kind of waiting in the wings to be the starter eventually, is how I view it, if Flott doesn't turn it around. But G-Man, it's not just Flott. I mean, like there was a breakdown in the red zone period today. The first period, the first play for Jared Goff's first team offense, Jamison Williams came over, I believe it was a kind of a slant to the back of the end zone from the right side to the middle. And something happened where Deonte Banks and Dane Belton got confused and crossed up, and Williams just ended up wide open in the back of the end zone. But you're absolutely right, G-Man. And this is something I've been reporting from the field, on this channel, on X. And, you can follow me if you don't already, P Leonard NYDN. And at all of my other places, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Threads, PL on NFL. But the secondary is an issue, and the pass rush can get there at times. But when it does not, the Giants will be prone to giving up deep shots, deep passes, and even a fair amount underneath, to be honest with you, because they are going to try to be more of a bend but don't break. Mike Ross checks in. Mike, thank you so much with a $7 super chat from Canada. He says, Giants said we ain't getting punked this year. I am here for it. Let's go. That's absolutely what they said. There was a lot of talk about being more aggressive, about standing up, about, they resist talking about it as like, oh, this team's a Super Bowl contender. But even Jason Pinnock said, this team's got a lot of confidence. They're at a place where we're trying to get to, let's see where we stand. Let's see how we stand up. And so there was definitely that mindset. And, that has to excite you. Like, listen, there's not a lot of things. And this is why I hope that you guys appreciate, I try to be honest about all of this. And, when there are a lot of reasons to doubt this team or doubt this franchise or organization, and, even if we're talking about another team, right? You could use Tua Tagovailoa and the fact that I don't trust him to win anything in Miami as an example, right? I'm going to be honest about where an organization stands, where they're failing, where they're struggling, what they need to do to get better, all those things. But it's also worth giving them credit when it's due. And it's just been, it's still a long way to go for these Giants. But when there are times that they step up and stand out, they deserve to be called out and credited for it. And I want to get into a lot with you guys tonight here. Obviously, this is the first time I'm talking to you since John Mara spoke to us at Hackensack University Medical Center for that really cool unveiling of that Giants-themed 100-season mural with one of their dearest partners there at Hackensack University Medical Center. And, of course, I'm sure you saw John Mara's full press conference posted on my YouTube channel here, on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard channel at PL on NFL. If you did, we'll dissect it. If you didn't, I'll fill you in on what happened as we go. And then, I also wanted to discuss early 53-man roster projection, ideas as far as where guys stand at different positions, who you think's on, who you think's off, who do you think is going to end up being, starters at different positions. What does the depth chart look like? Want to answer all those questions for you and give you a fuller picture of what I have seen on the field. Tuto backs up Mike and says, New York Giants 11-6 this coming season, and we say forget about it. 11-6 would be fun. Looking forward to that. I hope so, Tuto. That would be a lot of fun to see the Giants bounce back. And if you're talking 11-6, you're talking playoffs there, baby. That's what you're talking. All right. Just chugging some water there, hydrating. Hot day in the low to mid 90s. It's funny, you go out to these practices right now, and when the sun is out and beating down, you stand there and you look at your phone and it says that it's 82 degrees and you could swear it's 96. But then don't worry, just give it 45 minutes. It'll be 96. But you don't notice, honestly, until you get inside the air conditioning. And then it all kind of rushes back to you just what kind of heat you've been in. But because you're so locked in on the football, right? One-on-ones with the O-line and D-line, the 7-on-7 periods where the Giants, what receivers are going against the Lions corners. There was a block by Andrew Thomas today on Terrion Arnold, the Lions corner, on a pitch to the outside to the left coming at us in the red zone period. Holy cow. I'm sure you guys have seen the video, but if you listen, you can hear me in the background go, woo. Like, I yelled out. I could not believe that. I was standing about, 15 yards away from it. And wow, was that a loud, crushing block. And, Andrew Thomas, not a dirty player, but boy, can he be a monster. Welvin says, hey, Pat, how did John Runyon Jr. look and Tyler Nubin, the rookie? Haven't heard much on them. John Runyon Jr. playing left guard next to Greg Van Roten looked good today. Part of that offensive line that battled and held their own. They actually did pop, a couple runs here and there. Nothing crazy in the run game. So I would say every 3 runs, the Giants get, 7 yards. And then their other 2 runs are either stopped at the line or 3 yards. So still progress to be made there. But, Daniel Jones had time to throw today in the 11-on-11 periods. He really did. They didn't get in the end zone in the red zone, Daniel Jones. It ended up falling short on kind of one of those tricky like pitch plays on the inside to Malik Neighbors. By the way, take notice of that from a fantasy football perspective. They're even running like those Andy Reid type plays on the inside. Instead of doing it to a running back, they're running it to Malik Neighbors. So, he could be scoring touchdowns that are essentially 2-yard rushing touchdowns from the goal line. So keep that in mind from a fantasy perspective. But John Runyon Jr. looked good today. So as far as those one-on-one reps, the guys won some and lost some. Like I posted a video of 4 of them going in a row on the first team offensive line, and you could see some wins, some losses there. But just a good example, like Jermaine Illuminor, you see him win his rep on Aiden Hutchinson in that video. The first 2 reps he took against Hutchinson beat Illuminor twice easily on both. But then Illuminor puts him down in the ground in the third one. So, take it with a grain of salt. It's just one highlight. Remember that when you look at those. But bottom line is John Runyon Jr. and the O-line acquitted themselves on day one. Tyler Nubin, the safety, the second-round pick. The defense, there were some ups and downs. I did see there was one pass play deep that a guy got behind Nubin deep, and it looked to me like the ball was thrown just out of bounds to kind of the left sideline, and the receiver could have caught it and dropped it. So there was one, that was kind of a common theme today, was the defense letting the ball behind them too often when they didn't make big plays. Bobby Okereke did have an interception. But Nubin, listen, Welvin, I think when all is said and done, soon at some point here, Nubin's going to end up starting for the team. I do believe, but he does have to earn it. So this is only his, I think, 4th practice maybe. And so, this is him like kind of getting thrown into the fire. so it's not going to be perfect at the beginning, but I have to admit, I did not stand on the defensive side and watch every single snap of the defense. I watch the offense because the way I'm looking at these practices right now, everybody is, you can't watch both sides the whole time. And from my vantage point, I have a better feel right now for what the defense is going to be. I think they're going to be a team that on defense, they have some talent. They have some playmakers. They have some pass rushers. They're going to get to the quarterback some and make some plays that way. But they're going to play bend but don't break. They're going to let teams complete passes in front of them, trying to prevent the big play. But when their pass rush doesn't get there, they're going to be prone to giving up the big play. So I think they're going to give up some points. And then they're going to count on that pass rush to hopefully take some away or give some back to them as well. But on offense, to me, coming off a season where they averaged 15 points per game, where Daniel Jones has to show it now or never, where the offensive line was in shambles last year and has been just, put into a blender in the first 2 weeks of training camp here. I mean, the amount of urgency the Giants have had to show just to get 5 guys on the field in positions that can function so that they can get some gelling going on up there in front of Daniel Jones. Like, it was really hectic in that first week and a half leading up to this Lions practice. So that's why it's exciting. It was one reason why it's exciting that the Giants O-line was able to hold their own in this practice, because it has looked shaky so far. That was one thing that John Mara said. He said he has full confidence in Daboll and he thinks it'll be fine. He did admit, though, that early on, he goes, I know it looks shaky right now. So going from shaky to facing up against the Lions and coming out, being able to nod their heads and say, that was a pretty good day. That's really good. That's really good. All right. D-Kit, my man, $10. Thank you so much, D-Kit. He checks in and says, tough practice for JMS to miss, Pat, because today was a culture/character builder for them. Had to be tough on the kid. Is it looking like he's going to miss significant time? He is out there doing, like, let's say, so he's working with Frank Pirano, the one of the strength coaches, and he will do like a blocking drill where he's got his helmet on and his shells, and and Pirano kind of leans on one side, and JMS kind of blocks and leans into him somewhat gently in order to see what kind of pressure his shoulder can handle. I got to be honest, I don't have a solid like timeline on JMS, but what I see is that he seems to be handling that shoulder fairly gingerly, just watching him. I will say this, D-Kit, I'll say this about JMS. He was pretty locked in on the sideline. Like, I heard him urging guys on about, essentially telling guys like, let's go on the attack. Let's not wait for them to come to us. Like, let's get on them. He was helping set the tone and was involved. It wasn't like what we saw early in, like in the spring when, you think of how I described to you, Evan Neal, not only being out, but being away from the group in the spring. JMS here, like, he was with Evan Neal and the rehabbing group, for a time. So he wasn't standing with the team on the sideline the whole time, but he was coming over there and locking in with guys and urging them on in that way to kind of set that tone. So that was good. But no, I agree with you. I think as far as it's a tough day for him to miss. And also, let's just face it, D-Kit, and I see, other people saying too, that there's concern about JMS because of this. Greg Van Roten was signed clearly to be a center, right? When they signed Greg Van Roten, we all said they signed a right guard. They signed a right guard. They signed a right guard. Well, it turns out they signed him to be a center. And not only a center, but, with JMS out, it's not even him and Schlottman rotating here. It was Van Roten, Van Roten, Van Roten. And Jimmy Morrissey playing behind him. Schlottman, he had thrown up on the field on last Friday during the Giants, really the hardest practice of Brian Daboll's Giants career. So he's probably coming back from that. But I also think play-wise, it might have something to do with, what Van Roten has earned and what Schlottman has not type thing. So, yeah, D-Kit, I would say this, about JMS to round out that point. The Giants they will not provide a specific timeline on him, Brian Daboll did say he doesn't think it's long-term. That is one thing he did say. He doesn't think it's long-term. So that would indicate seemingly that he would be back in week 1. But but in week 1, I mean, but for week 1. So that would seem to indicate that he should be back for the regular season. The other thing Daboll said about Van Roten playing so much center is that he said, well, we know he can play right guard. He was with Carmen Brasillo in Vegas. He played right guard all of last season there. So we already know he can do that. So now we get him these center reps. So he gets them under his belt. So, maybe JMS comes back and then it becomes Thomas, Runyon Jr., JMS, Van Roten right guard, Illuminor right tackle. And then whenever Evan Neal comes back, he slots in along with Aaron Stinney as far as like backups who are competing and trying to push those guys in a positive way. Antonio, great to see you. D-Kit, thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Antonio says, what were your takeaways from today's high-intensity practice? First, Antonio, one thing I wanted to mention right off the top is a transaction. So the Giants claimed former Washington Commanders corner Christian Holmes, and they waived injured running back Jashawn Corbin. Now, I do think it's possible Corbin ends up back with the Giants at some point once he gets healthy. That's always a possibility with these things. But, count the number of corners that the Giants have signed or claimed at this point. Like I said, Shane Bowen said this is going to be happening all season. As you saw in Hard Knocks, Joe Shane kind of joking, saying, when we make this Brian Burns trade and trade the second round pick, maybe I'll just have to play corner for us. They also were looking on that board for McKinstry or Lassiter to fall to them in the 40s, and neither did, and they ended up taking Newbin. So they claimed that corner from Washington, Christian Holmes. And if you look, 30 games for the Washington Commanders last couple years. The most interesting thing about him, though, is that he's a special teamer. He's played some defense, but he's a special teamer. And so I think that is a claim not only to compete at corner maybe, but also definitely with an eye on special teams competition and depth as well. Antonio, as far as my takeaways from this high-intensity practice, my primary takeaways are Daniel Jones and the first-team offensive line and the offense held their own, stepped up, felt like they belonged. That's encouraging. Another takeaway is that, Brian Daboll was fiery, and as much as we've seen him kind of toned down and seemingly calm over the first week and a half of the training camp here in 2024, that Daboll still has that fire, that those eruptions that you can probably expect to see on the sideline this season. So that is something very much to keep a close eye on as we go. Another takeaway would be that their secondary continues to need work, that their defense is, I think, a much more of a work in progress than people may realize, both from a personnel standpoint and a scheme standpoint. I think that people are going to be surprised by how different that unit looks, just from the standpoint of how they're going to be playing, what they're going to be running, how they attack teams. I think they'll be less multiple than Giants fans are used to watching. That might be refreshing to some, but also may come back to bite them at other times. But that's something to continue to watch. Brian Burns is an exciting player to watch. He's he's a guy who's going to make plays for this team. Obviously, that contract demands that he does and makes a ton of plays for them. But he's encouraging. Andrew Thomas, a healthy Andrew Thomas, makes the world go round in Giants land. That's a huge takeaway. And another takeaway, Antonio, and I hinted at this on X, but another takeaway is that the young guys are going to play a lot. So Theo Johnson, 4th-round pick from Penn State. I tweeted this. He is tight end 1 for the Giants right now. Okay. Theo Johnson. He's catching passes from Daniel Jones. He's moving well as a receiver. He's a mean, big blocker. He's a better blocker than Daniel Bellinger. And I see here Antonio referencing that Chris Manhertz got hurt today. Not sure exactly the extent of that, Antonio. Chris Manhertz has been, uh, tight end 1A or 1B, depending on how you want to look at it. Today, if Manhertz had stayed healthy and how I was watching most of practice, I came out of the day saying, okay, if all the tight ends were healthy right now, I would put the depth chart at Theo Johnson is 1, Chris Manhertz is 2, and then Cager/Bellinger is 3. That is how I would put it. There, remember, Jack Stoll is in the concussion protocol, but he would also factor into the mix there along with Tyree Jackson on the back end. Jackson, though, has made plays with the second team with Drew Lock, but that's how I would look at it. But a takeaway from the rookie standpoint, Theo Johnson, tight end 1. Drew Phillips, slot corner 1. Okay. Now, of course, again, rookie, work in progress, developing. Is Flott really going to start on the outside? If he doesn't, does he move inside, or is that Phillips' job now? Nick McLeod, is he going to be in a rotation with Phillips at slot because that continues to happen at times? Is he going to end up being their starting slot outside corner? Regardless, clearly Phillips is going to play on this team. Elijah Chapman, undrafted free agent, is in fact in the first team rotation in defensive line. So there's Dexter Lawrence, and then next to him, it's Ryder Anderson, Nacho, Raheem Nunez-Roches, and Elijah Chapman. Chapman had a sack in the Giants practice a couple days ago. He's a playmaker so far right now. Question marks abound, of course, about the Giants' D-line depth and rotation there next to and behind Lawrence. But Chapman is an undrafted rookie, again, on the field. Tyler Nubin, he was hurt early in camp, but now he's coming on. He's playing on the second team right now. I would expect eventually at some point, if he has to earn it, but at some point the plan is for him to be in the starting lineup. You would have to think, and based on when they drafted him, Joe Schoen looks at Shane Bowen and says, it's a safety who's going to start for you. Malik Neighbors, we know, starting on offense, right? Tyrone Tracy Jr., rookie 5th-round pick out of Purdue. After Devin Singletary, it's Tyrone Tracy Jr.'s job. You see him out at wide receiver, split out wide, not just running the ball out of the backfield. I have to admit, even Dante Turbo Miller catches my eye often on the field. He had a rushing touchdown with the second team offense, I believe, in this practice. Tommy DeVito also hit John Giles, the undrafted rookie from West Florida, for a touchdown with the third team. But you look at this Joe Schoen draft, the 2024 draft here, and you look up and down it, and outside of Darius Muasau, the linebacker, these guys all look like they're going to play. And that's a major takeaway I took from this. Yes, you have to take with a grain of salt sometimes how the depth chart is forming and who they play, because they're also trying to just give guys opportunities to compete as well. But I think it's very clear that these guys on the Giants depth chart are going to end up to having to play. Antonio also says, anything you're hearing in terms of JMS, Evan Neal, and Jalen Mills being back on the practice field? So, already talked about JMS. Dable said not long-term, still handling that shoulder gingerly. We'll see. Greg Van Roten here playing center full-time right now. Maybe it ends up being JMS center, Van Roten right guard. Evan Neal and our good friend and listener and viewer, Jimmy, I believe if you're on here, I know you were asking me about this on Instagram and my DMs earlier. So, looking into Evan Neal a little bit, my understanding is, as frustrating as it was listening to Brian Dable deflect questions about his timeline a couple days ago and really just cast no new light on it other than he's going to continue to be out. He'll still be a tackle when he comes back, and not sure about his starting spot when he comes back. As much as I felt like, well, shouldn't you project confidence there? Is there something that they're hiding? It sounds to me like it's really simply about Neal is not fully ready yet. He's not fully healthy yet. And the Giants are working with him to rehab him so that when he does come back on the field, he's fully healthy and able to play his best football, is the way it looks like. And that therefore means we don't know when that's going to be. This is the former number 7 overall pick. You have to acknowledge, of course, that with what he said last year, that really, about the fans kind of lashing out after those, the criticism, and some of it warranted, obviously, due to his play, some of it not, based on some of the plays he was being criticized for, where it wasn't entirely his fault and he was reading it on social media and not enjoying it. But you do have to acknowledge that some of those comments that he made are going to linger with him until he can kind of get back on the field and prove that he's going to help this team win and kind of earn that trust and that love back from the fans. That's just how it works. And so there's certainly an element of wondering, how much of the Giants protecting him and protecting themselves there. But in large part, again, comes back to if the Giants know that the best way and the only way for Evan Neal to kind of, restart his career in New York and start fresh is to play good football. And Evan Neal knows that when he comes back, he has to play good football. Then neither side at this moment is interested in him coming back before he's fully healthy. And listen, Brian Daboll won't acknowledge it, but the bottom line is Evan Neal had a setback in the spring. That's why we saw him ramping up and then dialed back to the point where he wasn't doing basically anything by the end of the spring and not ready for the start of training camp. Things like that happen, unfortunately, in football. Unfortunately, they tend to happen with the Giants a fair amount. Remember Andrew Thomas with his hamstring last year during the season. That was frustrating. Comes back for one practice and then he's out a whole nother several weeks. Daniel Jones going back on the field after he gets hurt and then fully tearing his ACL. Tyree Phillips getting hurt, coming back into the game and tearing something and needing surgery. And, New York isn't the only place that this happens, but it does get frustrating when you see it happen multiple times over and over again. Sometimes these guys need to be protected from themselves. And, the bottom line here is the mismanagement of Neal's situation at the beginning, going back to the misdiagnosis and then that surgery, that put him behind the 8 ball. And now with a setback and, continued rehab work, we're just at a point right now where sometimes they dial the days up, sometimes they dial them back. That's Brian Daboll's own words. And so Evan Neal right now is just at a point where he and the Giants are on the same page that when he's healthy, he'll come back and not before. And so now it's about when is he actually going to be healthy? And we don't know the answer to that. So fact of the matter is, Antonio, you just can't count on him at this point to be prepared and be a part of the line they're going to go into the season with. Like, as we sit here now, that's not even a cut at Evan Neal. That's just a truth. Eric Ruffin says Giants are winning the Super Bowl and it will be a Daniel Jones breakout year. I'm going to favorite and star that comment because with the beard, Daniel Jones is back and Daniel Jones has the Giants aura and their trajectory pointing upward. I'm just saying it. Daniel, if we show up at practice on Tuesday or at the game on Thursday or at practice next week going into the Houston Texans game and you have a clean shaven face, then you're just disappointing the entire Giants fan base at this point. Everybody knows the secret behind you taking this huge step in this new year, in the second year of your big contract. So you heard it here first, second, third. We're going to keep repeating it here on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Keep the beard, Daniel. Antonio also says, thoughts on the Giants bringing in 3 corners throughout camp: Breon Borders, Mario Goodrich, and Christian Holmes. Antonio, just a sign of the fact that they don't have a solution at that position. They're throwing volume at it and seeing what sticks. They still don't have an answer there. Maybe they can help in special teams, but not starters. Stephen G says, hey, Pat, what's the feel in the Giants organization about Daniel Jones having a breakout season? Well, Stephen, the feeling right now is they need it to happen because it's him or nothing at the moment. Now, you guys all know I spent a lot of time on here telling you what I knew about the Giants, about their signing of Drew Lock, about their pursuit of a quarterback. Of course, we all know they tried to replace Daniel for the future, in the NFL draft. They weren't able to trade up. We all know they had Russell Wilson in for a visit, even though Hard Knocks completely omitted it. We all know that they thought they were going to bring Tyrod Taylor back, which is strange because Tyrod wasn't coming back. And we all know that Drew Lock was told that he would have a chance to compete for the starting job here and that he got all those first team reps in the spring, right? So fast forward to training camp. We're 2 weeks in or so. And listen, if Drew Lock had pushed Daniel Jones at all to this point, I'd be the first one to tell you Drew Lock is pushing Daniel Jones. He deserves first team reps. He deserves a chance, whatever. He has not done that. Drew Lock is not pushing Daniel Jones. Even on Jones's bad days, he is not pushing Daniel Jones. This season is Daniel Jones or bust for the Giants at the quarterback position. It's just a fact. Daniel Jones or bust at the quarterback position. So how do the Giants feel in the organization about Daniel having a breakout season? They know it has to happen because a lot of jobs are riding on it, and that's all there is to it as they sit here now. I will say this. The chip on his shoulder, Daniel Jones, is the best version of Daniel Jones. He told Tyler Dunn the other day that he's ticked off about the fact that the Giants tried to draft a quarterback. He's said versions of that, but never that directly. He said in that interview that he believes he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and that he's that confident that he plays that way. This is the guy. This is the guy that you want in there. Of course, we all know based on like the fight, for example, Daniel sometimes sticks his head in literally where it doesn't belong as far as putting it down, lowering it into a Dallas Cowboys defender or, taking hits to make a play because he is tough and he doesn't want to shy from anything. And that's one quality that's one of his strengths, but it also tends to be his weaknesses as far as not staying healthy. He needs to stay healthy. That said, I just think you have to love the passion and you have to love the energy that he's bringing right now. Not only, with his play on the field, but just the fact that he's not taking any shit from anybody. I mean, he's just not. All right, let's see. D Kit said, yeah, Pat, but when they say things like, I don't know, it will be long-term and our expectation is, we know it probably means the exact opposite, says D Kit. It can mean that, D Kit. I'm telling you, my information that I told you on Evan Neal, talking to people about that. I mean, that's my understanding on it. And JMS, I guess what I'm saying is I'm doubting along with you whether or not that's long-term and how long that's going to be, because Greg Van Roten is practicing right now as if they intend for him to be the center. I mean, he really is, so that's a fair point going back to that for sure. Ryan, what's up, Ryan? Good to see you. $10 super chat. Thank you, Ryan. He says, hey, Pat, great work as always. What should we expect from the Giants tomorrow, Tuesday, August 6th? In my opinion, today was a huge statement for establishing team identity. No doubt, Ryan. I think what you can expect is the Lions to come back with a vengeance. I think that you can expect the Giants and Lions both putting an emphasis on not fighting because, wow, did it. I'm telling you, sometimes you come home from work, which for me is covering Giants and NFL football, which is great. But, you come home, you got your family, you got, you're talking to friends, you're trying to, maybe you go out for dinner, you have a good time, or you meet up with people, or you run some errands or whatever it is. And you're living your life. You're talking about life too. There's football. There's plenty of other things to talk about as well, right? Sometimes you get your mind off of it. This is the kind of day, Ryan, where I came off that practice field. I'm driving home, calling people, telling people about it. People are texting me, seeing my tweets or seeing things on social media saying, wow, heard about Giants practice today. Sounds like a fun day. People are in my neighborhood saying, hey, I heard it was crazy. I'm at soccer practice telling people about it. Their jaws are hitting the floor when I'm telling them what was going on. I just played in a basketball game. People were asking me about it, right? So this is like an all day thing. I mean, that was really what we were seeing. The huge statement for team identity. I agree. Chris Manhertz told me before the practice that this was a chance to, quote, validate our identity. And he's a guy who's been on, this is now his 5th team, I believe, or 6th. And, he's seen a lot of different teams, and he knows essentially, let me put it this way. The Giants, there were Giants players and people in the Giants building after that. Remember that one practice earlier last week where the Giants offense was atrocious? And I wrote all about it and was talking about how unacceptable the line was, how bad they looked on offense. The Giants felt the same way. Like, the Giants offensive players and people in the Giants building, they know that's not good enough. Like, people want to say, oh, there are some people who are like, hey, Pat, you're making too big of a deal out of one practice early in training camp. No, the alarm bells go off in their building when things like that happen, because they want to stop it, nip it in the bud. They've seen too much of it. It's been too long, right? So there was urgency here coming out of that one practice that I just talked about, but coming into the Detroit Lions joint practices as well. And so what do you expect from the Giants on Tuesday? I think you have to expect them to be aggressive but disciplined. Now, does that manifest itself in them still being able to hold their own and kind of push the Lions around or push back when the Lions push them? That's what you have to hope for. What I would want to see in this next day. Now, Malik Neighbors, he had catches, he made some plays in this first game or in this first practice. What I want to see in this second practice is some dominance from Malik. That's what I want to see. John Kirk checks in with a $5 super chat. Thanks, John. He says, any idea who plays Thursday at quarterback O-line? Any chance we'd see top 3 wide receivers for a few plays? I assume Jones isn't playing. Daniel Jones said he wants to play, but he said also we try to create game scenarios in these practices. I don't know for sure at the moment. I do believe that in the end, we're not going to see him in this game. But at some point, you would think that they would want Daniel to get some game reps under him with the knee. Daniel did say, though, flat out, my knee feels fine. I feel good about it. I feel good about the knee. That there's, this, I don't think anybody really thought that at this point in the calendar, we're just in August now, that Jones, there wasn't even going to be a question about Daniel Jones' right knee, but that's where he stands. Maybe they give some guys, chances on the road in Houston in the second game instead of at home right off the bat. That could be possible. I do think a lot of the O-line would play, John. I think maybe. Now, listen. Well, actually, let's put it this way. Andrew Thomas, you can't play him. I wouldn't play John Runyon Jr. I would think a guy like Greg Van Roten can use snaps because he hasn't been in camp. He hasn't been around in the spring. A guy like that does need to get reps and play football. So you could argue that a guy like that, it would be valuable for him to get some reps, right? But remember, Illuminor is playing with bruised ribs too. So, good chance you're not seeing a lot of those guys on the field on Thursday as far as the O-line and Daniel. And yeah, you want to see Neighbors get some run, but the fact of the matter is, John, I guess my takeaway is I'm not sure the starters would play right off the bat, but we'll see. Dable has changed a lot this year compared to what he's done in previous years. So it's possible, he could give guys a series and then take them out. But, I would say this: do not play Andrew Thomas. Do not play Andrew Thomas. Do not play Andrew Thomas. That's what I would say. Peter Randazzo says, Dable indicated today that Jones had enough practice reps and Jones might not play Thursday night. What's up with that? Yeah, Peter, that's exactly what I was saying, is that Daniel Jones said that, essentially the point of these joint practices a lot of the times now is, and you see them, it's widespread around the league, teams are doing it. They try to get game work or close to game work done in scripted settings, and they feel like they have more control over it as far as, keeping guys healthy. And a major part of that is not tackling, or, they hit, but it's like not tackling too hard to the ground. Like that hit that the Lions corner made on Eric Gray, Maurice Norris. I mean, he really smoked him. So Norris is he's an undrafted rookie from Fresno State. So that partially explains it as well. The rookies are kind of like they're told to ratchet up the intensity, but not too much. And like that's where Drew Phillips was as well. It's like they're kind of caught in between. They don't want to get pushed around and punked, but they don't want to cross the line. And so sometimes they end up crossing the line because they're trying to stand up for themselves. But hits like that are uncalled for. And really you're having joint practices to try to avoid hits like that. Is really the bottom line. And so, Peter, the Giants, I do think that the starters should play at some point, especially you want to see the O-line. You do want to see the O-line together in a game. Knowing Dable, knowing how the Giants work, I would guess that they would give them maybe run on the road in Houston, in front of a road crowd and maybe try not to, like if they were to slip up at home, try to avoid, the boo birds or any negativity in that sense. I mean, I could be wrong about that. That's just me off the cuff. I have no information on that, but, we'll see. I mean, I'm as hopeful as you guys, but I wasn't counting on it coming into the week that a lot of those guys were going to play, but you do want the young players to play. I mean, you do want them to get a feel for what it's like out there, so that's something you want to see. Give Two says, who is the most impressive player to watch so far? Not named Malik Neighbors. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas are up there. Give Two, I think the more Theo Johnson plays, the more people are going to like him, the more he's going to impress people. Another name that I think people need to keep an eye on is Darius Slayton. Now this is a player who, as we know, changed agents recently, talked in mid-July about the idea that teams have that he would have welcomed a trade in the spring. And then he talked to me and he did say he's past that now. He's focused on football, but he also added at one point that throughout his career, teams have wanted to try to trade for him as far as like there has been a market for him. It's actually interesting to see, the Detroit Lions, one position they have unsettled right now is their number 3 receiver spot. So there's a part of me that watches these practices wondering if Darius Slayton is a player that the Lions are scouting closely, looking at as a potential add. The issue with that is, though, that if you watch the Giants offense and how they operate, even though Jalen Hyatt is in the mix, Darius Slayton's a big part of the offense. He's a productive part of the offense. He's a player that Daniel Jones trusts. And so, you could see it on the one hand playing out like this is a player who they can get something for, but also the way they are constructed, he clearly helps them. And so I would say he stands out. I would say Darius Slayton stands out. Stephen G says, I love the physicality the Giants are playing with. We have a chip on our shoulders, no doubt. Mike K says, why are the beat reporters so hung up on getting injury updates from Dable? It's either that or loaded questions that everyone knows the answer to. Hey, Mike, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that because so bottom line is like every team or coach handles it differently. There are some teams like Andy Reid, for example. Now, I'm not saying he gives you all the information, but like Andy Reid starts his press conferences by saying, here are the injuries, and then he opens it up. Brian Daboll doesn't do that. He just opens it up and kind of makes you ask the question, right? And then he'll answer it. So sometimes it's like if you don't identify the player, that was out yesterday and you don't ask about it, he's not going to volunteer it. But if you notice it and ask, he'll answer it. So really, I'm surprised you have that attitude toward that, Mike, because I think a lot of the reporters view it as like we are helping get the information that fans want to know about the team. And loaded questions, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. I don't load my questions up. I'll tell you that. Bijal says, let's effing go, Pat. Love it. Love it. Loving what I'm seeing from the Giants with all the cornerbacks being signed as camp bodies. Does this increase or decrease chances of us signing a legit corner eventually? Bijal, what it tells me, honestly, is that they're not going to sign a legit corner. Like there's no reason to sign like 50 different guys to give them a run if you were just going to be able to pay like a big time corner to do it. At least, I don't know, that's kind of how I see it. So I view it as this is how they're operating to try to fill that. That's how I see it. But, that seems to be the case. And again, going back to Shane Bowen's comment about like, this is just going to be something that's happening all year. Discouraging thing to hear, but sounds like that's the deal. Is RB2 Tyrone Tracy's job to lose? I think so, Antonio. I think right now, my running back, we saw Jashaun Corbin released, waived injured, obviously. My running back depth chart right now is Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and Dante Turbo Miller. That's my running back depth chart. I know Eric Gray's on the team. He gets some meaningful reps, but doesn't do it for me. Justin says, thank you for all your coverage and hard work, Pat. You got it, Justin. Thank you for being here. Justin says, are you seeing anything different in the team's camp approach compared to last year, as we saw they weren't ready to go last season versus Dallas? Definitely, they did 11 on 11 this spring. They didn't do 11 on 11 last spring. And, we're not seeing rest days left and right for guys this year. We're seeing people practicing. We're seeing, definitely an approach of, this is an admission that they didn't do it right last year. Like, this isn't an admission that they had to change and they had to practice hard. And so now they're practicing, as Chris Manhertz told me, and you see that in the New York Daily News story. Chris Manhertz said, practice is supposed to be the hardest thing you do. So when you get to the game, it's not going to be easy, but you've already seen it, you've already experienced it, and you've calloused your body to withstand it. There is no better way to explain it than that. And the Giants for these last couple of years haven't understood that. Last year was a great example of that. Not just Dable and Shane, but also, their collaboration with Ronnie Barnes and the training staff. Like, you need to get it figured out, and you need to understand that practice, real football is how you get better at real football, is by practicing real football. Give Two says, does this team feel like a better team than 2 years ago? To me, if they stay healthy, I believe they are. They do have high-end players like Brian Burns and Malik Neighbors that they didn't have before. Obviously lost Saquon Barkley on offense. I think they have holes that are going to be tough to conceal, but Give Two, I really think the O-line is a huge part of it, right? I think their ability to push, to create and protect the pocket and push in the run game is going to have a lot to do with how this team goes, and obviously the pass rush on defense. No says, do you think the cornerback 2 is on the roster? And if so, who? To me, week 1 starter on this roster outside is Nick McLeod. I think he is on the roster, and I think it's him at the moment. Let's see. Big Jim says, how did our interior D-line look in those trenches today? Obviously, we have a big 3, but curious how some of those youngsters are progressing against fresh meat in the Lions O-line. My understanding was kind of, back and forth there, some wins, some losses. Like I said, Elijah Chapman, encouraging, kind of coming on during camp, undrafted rookie, a guy to continue to watch. I do think that the Giants' rotation and depth there is a concern. Ryder Anderson is a player who right now is playing as a starter, and he's a guy who I'm rooting for him, like him. He's obviously impressed them to this point, but you're really that's going to be a tough ask for, guys like him and Nacho, to play a lot of football there, Chapman to factor in. Jordan Phillips, to me, is not a part of that rotation at all. As far as what I would count on, like, it would, at this point, it would surprise me if he was on the team. Doesn't look like he's in shape, frankly. We really didn't see him a lot of the spring. But he's also a Dable, Buffalo guy. So maybe he gets kind of scholarshiped, and maybe they can get him in shape and keep him in the building and keep him a part of it. That's something to watch. I'm going to keep getting all your guys' questions here. Remember, super chats and super stickers. I will answer your questions and comments immediately if you drop them. It's a great way to support the channel. And also kind of get your question or comment answered first. Remember, guys, we are sponsored here. We are an hour into the podcast now. If you're listening on audio or on Apple or Spotify, I appreciate you guys checking in here on the Believe Network as well. Here on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard, we are brought to you by the Boom Chaga Mushroom super drink right here over my shoulder. A natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or you access it through the QR code on your screen right here, you will get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Also brought to you by Bet Online and by Estate 98 Coffee. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball to get a special buy one, get one free deal on Estate 98 Coffee, an all natural specialty coffee with no sugar that is convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents like me. D Kit says, disclaimer, I do not agree with Mike K. All right. Appreciate you, D Kit, always supporting the channel, checking in with those super chats. Let's see. Mike Ross says, oh my God, even here in Canada, it was boiling. This O-line looks much improved for real. It was for this day. It was for this day. G-Man says, is Phillips bigger enough to move to the outside and Flott moved back to the slot? I don't think so, G-Man. I think Drew profiles as kind of an inside. Like, think of him as, when Darnay Holmes plays well in the slot and he's kind of like a downhill run defender, good tackler, hard-nosed. Phillips is like a better version of that, a kind of a quicker version of that we've seen so far. What we haven't seen yet is, we're going to have to continue to see coverage snaps where he's winning all the time, right? Which is not going to happen for a rookie. It doesn't happen for any corner. But what I mean is holding your own to the point where you're saying, that this guy, we can trust him every down. I mean, obviously, he's made a lot of plays. He's made plays in coverage. He's had interceptions in practice, multiple interceptions in practices, even one in a one-on-one drill, which is impressive on the sideline about a week ago. Outside's a different beast. That's a different, you're looking for more length out there. You're looking for that downfield speed. You're looking for closing ability. I think he's properly fitted right now in that slot. That's what they drafted him to be. So I don't see that, though, G-Man, the way that they are operating and the way that they are trying things and the way that they need to find their solutions quickly, if they feel like he's playing well enough to at least earn that shot, earn that chance, nothing wrong with that, right? Giving him a shot, but that's not how I see things. But he's definitely going to play a lot for this team. No question about it. And at least so far, we'll wait and see some games. But obviously, what the thing Darnay Holmes has struggled most with is holding, right? Is getting his hands on guys' jerseys and committing penalties. And so far, we haven't seen that too much grabbing from Phillips. But we'll see. I mean, you have to guard some pretty good players there in the slot. Let's see. Definitely against a good D line, says Bookend. They look good. That's right. G-Man says, I never felt he could cover Neighbors, so CD Lamb, you can forget about it. Yeah, I mean, most people can't cover CD Lamb, but yeah, the Giants don't have somebody really who is covering CD. Like in your mind, who's covering him when they play, right? Is it Banks just moving into the slot and following CD everywhere? That could be what they try. Very encouraged. That's right. Jackson Weisman says, is it possible Evan Neal has taken his last snap as a Giant, even if healthy? I can't see that he has a spot with the starting five. Why can't we know if there was a setback this summer? There was a setback in the spring, Jackson. There was. I can tell you that. There was. And I believe I was the one who identified for everybody in the spring, like, this guy's not doing anything anymore suddenly. But yes, I can tell you that for a fact, Jackson. He had a setback. That's what happened, as he was coming back. And they're trying to make sure he's fully healthy before he comes back the next time. Yes, it is possible at this point that he's taken his last snap as a Giant. He is definitely not, at this moment, you can tell, in their starting 5 plans. Now, could he end up there at some point because of injuries or whatever? Like, yeah, possibly. But that was one question Brian Dable kind of hinted at. There was maybe a change coming. Like, I basically said, like, are you counting on him to be part of the starters, or does he have to prove he's going to earn that again? And he basically said, yeah, like that's going to be something we have to review when it comes to that, which is essentially saying, he didn't say like, yeah, he has his job back when he comes back, right? Which at this point you understand. So yes, it is possible he's played his final game as a Giant. And frankly, Jackson, if he can't get back on the field fully healthy and re-earn the fan bases and teams' trust and respect with strong play, then he probably does, uh, would benefit from a change of scenery. D Kit says, Pat, didn't see much reporting on the run game. What did you see? Some positives, but more like I think the Giants run game right now, room to improve. You see them pop one here and there. You see kind of a lot get stuck in mud before they can, maybe they make the first block, but not the second is what I'm seeing. Um, you know, every practice I've seen them maybe pop one run or two, and then a lot of the rest are either stopped at the line or, 2, 3, 4 yard gains or so. So that's what I saw against the Detroit Lions as well. Like I said, Dante Miller and the reserves, a nice touchdown in the red zone. Kind of a walk-in, like a really nice run by him. He's got a lot of juice. Turbo does. He does. I mean, his nickname's Turbo, so he should. Yes, Bill just pointed that out. Jackson says, hi, Pat. I heard the Giants offense took deep shots today. How did they do on those? Yeah, so Daniel Jones, or Janiel Dones, I should say, with the beard, he hit Jalen Hyatt deep and Darius Slayton on a deep cross in 7-on-7. He also completed a pass to Malik Neighbors deep. Nice catch by Neighbors in 11-on-11. He was ruled out of bounds. There was some debate whether or not the official was accurate, and there were people suggesting that if there were a review, he would have been inbounds. Maybe. It was an excellent catch either way. And did reflect that, they're going for it and that they can hit those, right, quote unquote. So that's something to look forward to, is the fact that the Giants are trying to be aggressive and they're trying to be diligent and intentional about pushing the ball down the field. It's a clear emphasis of theirs, of Daniel Jones, of Brian Dable's offense. There were some that were, deep shots that were overthrown or that were batted down or knocked down. So they didn't complete all of them, but there was enough. And the 7-on-7 kind of gives you some confidence in that too. So that's part of the reason they do it, I'm sure, on both sides. But it gives you, some confidence to then go into that 11-on-11, and that's what happened. Big Jim says, another question for you. How did the running backs hold up in pass blocking lines? Lions have some stud linebackers, D-line pieces that must have challenged them. Did anyone separate themselves today other than Motor? Nothing crazy from a blocking standpoint. I have noted for you guys in the past that, the tight ends tend to step up into the back or drop into the backfield in motion as pass blockers. What I've seen a lot in practice. So Manhurts, Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger, I've seen all of those guys do that. And so sometimes when they're looking to take a shot or really buy an extra second, we've seen them basically get into a fullback position. And so they're not just relying on an undersized running back to take on a linebacker or a free edge rusher. They're kind of, Dable is trying to scheme it so that they have a bigger, more reliable blocker back there to buy Daniel Jones some time. Tyrone Tracy Jr. played a lot with the first team, though. He's playing a lot with the ones. And like I said earlier about a big takeaway being that, the young guys are going to play. Tyrone Tracy is a big part of that. D-Kid says, Pat, maybe our O-line has looked shaky because of our pass rushers. What do you think? That's possible. I mean, the day they looked the worst, Dexter Lawrence didn't even practice. So that was concerning. But, Kayvon Thibodeau looks like he's in a little bit better shape than he was last year. I will say that. He definitely does. And Brian Dable kind of acknowledged that he's turned it up a little bit here. And Brian Burns, he puts some moves on guys now. I mean, he can beat guys clean, which is hard to do in the NFL. So we've seen some of that. So yeah, no, I mean, there's something to that. Obviously, there's blame one place and credit another anytime a play is made or someone is beaten. So yeah, I mean, that's a possibility, but yeah, no, I mean, listen, the Giants D line is going to their pass rush and D line is going to help make or break their season for sure. All right, let's see. Ken Peters, hey Pat, since the Giants will not be picking up Evan Neal's fifth-year option, don't you think trading him when healthy during the season would yield the biggest return? What kind of pick do you think they get? Well, if he doesn't play any football between then and the time now and the time they trade, you're not. I can't imagine you'd be getting a lot because the team knows that you're trying to get rid of him and that's your priority. And you also haven't seen any recent really strong football, good football. So to me, if you're trading Evan Neal right now, you're not getting a significant draft pick in return. If he gets back on the field and plays some good football for you, right? Like let's say he comes back in week 5 and, steps in for an injured Illuminor or whatever it is, and let's say he plays a couple really good games and then has some struggles in the next one. Now maybe if he puts some good tape against like an elite edge rusher recently and he's healthy and clearly healthy, now you're talking about what you're suggesting, right? Now you're talking about that. But remember, Ken, this is also a Joe Shane top 10 pick. So if Neal gets back on the field and he's showing really good football, you're not trying to say we're giving up on a guy when really if he turns into a stud now, you get all the credit. You drafted him, right? So that's, it's a catch-22 there. I do think though, Ken, that if there were a path at this point for them to give Evan a fresh start and for them to, move on, that does seem like it's in the cards potentially, but you have to get there too. And I think a lot of times fans overrate how much a player on their own team, not just Giants fans, just fans in general. I think it's easy to overrate what your own players would be worth on the open market. You just have to remember, the guys you're going to be worth a lot are the guys usually that you don't want to give up and that you're probably only giving up because you're not a good team. Case in point, like a Leonard Williams or whatever, right? So, that would be my answer there. Yeah, JMS, reason to be concerned. Dable says not long-term. Is Schlottman no good? Hasn't done very well. I think it's possible his work was limited here because of the throwing up and probably some dehydration a couple days ago. But noteworthy how many snaps Greg Van Roten got today when Schlottman barely did any, and Morrissey played a lot as well. Vince G says, Big Pat, were you at practice? Of course, Vince G. Every day. Jackson says, how is Jalen Hyatt's camp so far? Did you see him playing a bigger role this year? I still think that as I see them shaking out, Darius Slayton's a major part of this offense as we sit here and now. Jalen Hyatt can make plays down the field, has made plays down the field. Jalen is a guy who clearly helps them stretch it along with Malik Neighbors. But I still think, Wandale's going to be in the slot and on the field a lot. Neighbors is not going to come off the field much. And Slayton's a more well-rounded receiver. So Hyatt can help them. He has helped them so far in camp. He will continue to. But I think he's a part of a 4-man rotation there as we sit here now. Jackson said they said Evan Neal wasn't long-term weeks ago. Yeah, I know. Vince G says, I won't let them cut ties with Evan Neal. He's always hurt and seems to have I want them to cut ties with him. He's always hurt and seems to have a bad attitude. But see, I don't know why fans don't fully contextualize it because I try to stress this, Vince G. I understand part of your sentiment there. He had a sprained ankle that was misdiagnosed, or he had a fractured ankle that was misdiagnosed as a sprain that he rehabbed as a sprain for a month before he found out it was a fracture. So this situation started with him being let down, not him letting the Giants down. So let's make sure we understand there's more context to this than just Evan Neal being hurt here. Jackson says, is Daboll calling plays now? Yes, he is. Theo Johnson does look good for a rookie. I agree. Vince says Theo is going to be better than Brock Bowers career-wise, obviously, as long as he stays healthy. Wow. Vince, I think you might need to see Brock Bowers play again because he is an absolute monster. Nothing against Theo Johnson, and Theo does look good. Jackson says he looks like a lineman who runs fast. Yeah, he is a monster. D-Kit says, Pat, you forgot Timmy Horn at defensive tackle. No, I did not, D-Kit. I did not forget Timmy Horn. I know he's in that group, but I do not consider him an option to play meaningful snaps for this team. Scott says, hey, Pat, is Darian Beavers looking good at all? He's made some plays during camp. He's been buried on the linebacker depth chart. It's Bobby Okereke, Micah McFadden. Carter Coughlin's hurt right now. He was getting some run there. And then Deontay Johnson. And then you have Matthew Adams, Darian Beavers. So we've seen him get his hand on some passes, some tip balls, get involved, definitely building it back up. Bill says, all I can find is Chris Manhertz walked off with the trainer, nothing else. Yeah, no clarity there on Manhertz yet, how he's doing. He and Theo Johnson are tight ends 1 and 2 when healthy. That is for sure. Rich S., what's going on? He says, Pat, hope all is well. Same to you, Rich. I like what I'm seeing from this camp so far, but I'd love to see a pass rushing defensive tackle next to Dex. Yep. Yeah, there's some clear positions the Giants need some upgrades and more talent. Are they going to get it? We'll see. Or they need guys to step up. Cornerback 2 is one. That other defensive tackle spot is one. I agree. They're trying to let it shake out in camp. We'll see who steps up right now. Ryder Anderson is the guy who's on the field often as the first one next to Dexter Lawrence. Let's see. What weight Evan Neal came into camp at, I do not know that. But no, this is not a situation where the Giants are like frustrated with Evan Neal's work ethic here right now. Like this is a player who had an injury misdiagnosed and then had a setback in the spring. That's what happened. Vince says, why has no one picked up Stephon Gilmore? Is it because he doesn't want to go through training camp? Yeah, I think a lot of veterans, when they have the luxury, they can kind of stay away from the dog days of training camp. And then also it's about Vince, these guys, like a guy like Gilmore, if he just lets the dust settle, eventually it's going to get to the point in later August or mid-August where it's very clear that teams desperately need a corner. And that's where the contract that he's looking for pops up. That's usually what ends up happening with players of that caliber. Jackson says, put his money where his mouth is and have his best year. Daniel Jones. Hope so. Good for Jones, says nicking around. I hope he has a great season and the Giants thrive. I'm rooting for him. He's the QB. We don't go anywhere without him, no doubt. Enrique Jr. says, was hype when I heard about Daniel Jones getting in a scuffle today. Also, are you from Delco? No, I am from Northeast Philadelphia, Enrique, originally. So not Delco, but Northeast Philly, born and raised. Molly Mall says, no, Pat, I told you they weren't drafting a QB, and Locke told everyone he was the backup. They wanted to improve the O-line and add a number 1 wide receiver. They did that. Now let's evaluate. This is what they expected. Molly Mall, I'm not sure you watched Hard Knocks, but they were trying to trade up to number 3 to draft a quarterback. They just weren't able to, and therefore they went to plan B, which was roll with Daniel, get him weapons, and the line. Let's see. Molly Mall says, I also said if it wasn't one of the top 3, they're definitely not drafting a QB. Moving up was never really a true option, but they had to see if it was doable. Joe wasn't eager. They tried to get up to 3. They also had Russell Wilson visit them at the very start of free agency. They were looking for ways to figure it out. They just couldn't get there. Vince says, I would like to see the starters play for a quarter. It's always right, hit or miss, though. Was it a clean hit on Eric Gray? No, I thought it was dirty. I mean, it was kind of a blindside shoulder hit. Like Gray caught the pass and turned, and this guy was kind of like bearing down, right? So it was kind of a really fast play. So it might have been hard for the guy to react differently, honestly, because it's football and he's right there. But he really popped him. Gray was laying down on the ground for a little bit. Frankly, I didn't think he should have gone back into the practice, but he did. Let's see. British Gridiron Film says last year one-on-ones was in practice. Tyrod got 2 drives, and then it was DeVito the rest of the game. Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's more of what I expect, but we'll see. Peter says, yeah, Pat, practice is practice. It's not the same as a game. It doesn't make sense. Peter, I do think they need to play the starters or most of the starters at some point in the preseason. I'm just not sure if it's going to be this one. Vince says, if Thomas doesn't play, don't play Daniel Jones. Agreed. Ray agrees on my running back depth chart. Brett, what's going on? Good to see you. Giant Takes says, even when Dable answers a question, it will be followed by 2 to 3 follow-ups. Like, how about an actual football question? Giant Takes. Well, I guess every press conference or question is different. I think if a question gets a follow-up, it's usually because the person didn't answer the first question, or because there are kind of different sides to a certain topic that you're trying to make sure you're giving the person the opportunity to cover or discuss or answer to before you write about that topic. So that can happen. I do think sometimes there are times where a coach, not just Dable, but people you're asking questions, they might be trying to protect the organization or themselves or players or whatever, where there's only so much they can give you. And so sometimes you're on the right track to something, but they're not really going to help you, but something and you're trying to get the truth either confirmed or, further your knowledge on that. And so becomes a game of cat and mouse. So that can happen as well. But listen, it's our job to try to get to the truth and try to report it back to you guys. So, injury updates, questions about the football that they're playing on the field, questions about issues that come up with the team, questions about positives that we see developing, encouraging steps that the team is taking. Like, it all falls into the same pot. I do think maybe questions like this about how we ask questions. I mean, listen, there might be people who ask questions with like an agenda, right? But I don't know if as much thought goes into the questions as a couple of you guys think do, like or think it does. Like, in other words, what I mean is, yes, you have ideas of things that you want to ask about, and you have plans for, here's what I think we need to cover today, or here's what I think the fans need to know more about, or here's a story I'm writing about that I need some more insight on. But by and large, like, I don't think it's as deep as what you guys are referring to. Now, I would be curious, Giant Takes, what football questions you're asking about that aren't being asked of Dable. Because if there's questions you think that need to be asked that aren't being asked, I'd be curious to hear, what exactly they are. Jackson says, do you think they'll pass the ball more than last year? Yes, because Dable is the OC. He doesn't run the ball much. Giant Take says, I think the problem is most reporters, not all, don't have enough knowledge of the game to ask original questions, unfortunately. Giant Takes, I do agree with that. I do agree with that point. I do agree with that. There's a lot of people who cover different sports, not just the NFL, who they might be really good writers, but they don't know the sport as well. Or they might know the sport really well, but they're not as good at writing and talking about it. Or they might be really good reporters, like connections building and sourcing, but they don't quite know the game. So there's a variety of different types of people who cover the NFL. I do think you're right that there are people who watch a football game who cover the NFL who don't necessarily see everything that others do. There are some things that I'm not, as good at as others or whatever. But I do think one of the things I do well is see the field and see what's happening on the field. And, even if I don't fully know every single thing that I'm looking at, I know enough to know what I need to ask about to get clarification as well. Right. About formations and schemes and attacking pressures and, coordinators and their preferences and their kind of coaching trees and their tendencies and things like that. DBs are a worry, no doubt. Big Jim says Ryder Anderson isn't the solution. Yeah, I agree. He can be part of your rotation, but not the solution. Big Jim says, when are you going to get on the Talkin Giants bus? When I am invited, Big Jim, when I am invited. Evan Spitzberg says Jordan Riley is my sleeper on the defensive line. Jordan's factored in as well. I should say that is one guy who's gotten some chances and made some plays, against the Giants offensive line at times. So he's another guy in that mix, but need somebody to stand out and pop for sure. Yes, Drew Phillips was guarding Amon-Ra St. Brown on the play. He jammed him at the line, and then eventually the pass was completed to Amon-Ra St. Brown, but it was getting chippy because basically Phillips covered him long enough that it would have been a sack on the play. And then, Brown, I think, gave him a shove, and then Jamison Williams gave him a shove, a harder shove. Phillips shoved him back and kind of escalated. Why are they still giving Flott cornerback 2 reps? I keep hearing he's having a terrible camp. Can they try McLeod? Yeah, AJS, they basically indicated they're giving Cordell a trial there. Kind of an interesting way to go about training camp, but I don't know. Somebody asked a question earlier. I mean, maybe they are giving him a long rope before they have to try and go make a signing, right? That could be another reason, but it does look, based on their behavior, like they're trying to throw a volume of names and players at it and see what sticks. I do think right now, if they started a regular season game, Nick McLeod would be there. Robert Mead says, if DB is a problem, maybe they'll trade for one week of the trade deadline. Hey, if they're acquiring a corner at the trade deadline instead of trading off players, then that'll be a sign of a good season. Brett says, who's the number one punt returner? Gunner. Yep. Back at punt returner today, Gunner, McKenzie, and Ayir Asante. I personally think that's Gunner's job to lose. And, McKenzie is a guy that Daboll clearly likes, though. He's gotten some run. Any early thoughts on Graham Gano and the new kickoff rule? It would seem this is not ideal for him as an older kicker. Graham is really good at placing the ball. You remember like with Joe Judge and Thomas McGahee, he's really good at kind of trying to land it. Like, let's force the returner into this corner, but not kick it out of bounds, things like that. So I think directionally he's really good. And I think it could benefit him in that regard. So, as far as, of course, we saw last year, like, you don't want him involved in roaring down the field and having to make big time hits and take guys on. You don't want him getting hurt that way. But that'd be continually interested in watching the special teams and the kickoff rule evolve and how Gano handles it. Is Kayvon staying at outside linebacker or defensive end? Well, so they're a, four down line basically. Sometimes 5, depending on what they're running. And so, technically still an outside linebacker, but D end, 4-man front, outside linebacker, 5-man front, depending on, how they run it and how they align on certain plays. But Kayvon is, really you're looking more at these guys, this front 4 with their hands in the dirt. So the answer really is defensive end, but they can have them doing both depending on how multiple they are and what they're switching in and out of, depending on down and distance. Big Jim says, very curious at the end of the season, who is more single play explosive, Tyrone Tracy versus Neighbors. Both dudes were graded elite with explosive plays during draft prep. Tracy and Wandale feel like a dynamic duo. Neighbors is the answer there. Neighbors is the more explosive player there, though Tracy does have explosive potential, and he has some size to him. Like, he's not like a tall guy. He's let's see. Well, he's 5'11". So, like Devin Singletary's 5'7". Devin Singletary is 5'7", 203. Tyrone Tracy's 5'11", 210. So as far as the Giants running back room is concerned, he brings size, but also like he packs a little bit of a punch. He has had some ball security issues at times this summer. like against his own Giants defenders. So that's something to keep an eye on. That happens a lot with rookies too. So it's just something to watch. Evan says it's good that Van Roten and Illuminor has chemistry if they both are a part of the starting offensive line. Agreed. It can't hurt. D-Kit says, Pat, can we talk some Isaiah Simmons? Still a freak athlete. Absolutely. Encouraging play watching Simmons bat down a pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown at the goal line during the red zone drill. Love seeing that. And, if they can have him making a few key plays a game the way that Wink Martindale's defense did last year, then that's efficient use of him. And by key plays, I mean difference-making plays, right? So scheming him up to use his athleticism to help change, drives, quarters, halves, games, right? Like that's what we saw last year. So that's what you want to see from them this year. Matt says, Pat, why didn't the Giants get a 3-tech during the draft process? Yeah, Matt, I mean, as you saw, they drafted for need essentially, wide receiver, safety, where McKinney, so wide receiver neighbors was not only they need a number 1 wide receiver, but also Saquon leaves, they need a top weapon for Daniel Jones. Safety, Tyler Nubin was Xavier McKinney out the door. Drew Phillips, slot corner. They needed a corner. They were trying to get an outside corner in round 2, but they needed a starting corner, outside and slot, really technically. And so that was a need that they selected. And that, when you talk about why that over 3-tech there, that they're going by the board at that point as well. So you go by need and then also by the board. And then tight end need was created by Darren Waller's retirement. They draft for need there, tight end, right? And so on. Running back, Tyrone Tracy, Saquon, and then Darius Moisow, like a special teams, like linebacker flyer. So need-based draft, obviously, to your point, they needed a 3-tech as well. So why not take that? But, of course, limited picks. And I guess you could say, hey, they should have tried to dance around the board a little bit and acquire more picks to get those players. But also it was a draft where there was a fall off after the first couple rounds. So, you weren't getting necessarily players that were going to be like immediate contributors in their minds at that spot, at that depth of those drafts. Dadan Shelton. I thought that said Danny Shelton for a second. He says the relationship with management and Neal is severed. Misdiagnosis, not a great way to build trust. Trade him. That doesn't, I don't get any indications right now that there's any like tension there, but at this moment, but I do think that, it's possible that a change of scenery is the right thing. Strider says, Pat, seeing DJ in a scuffle is worrisome. Just glad he's not hurt. Also love when linemen pull and deliver a good hit. Andrew Thomas had a great block. That was some block, man. That was great to see. I was happy to be standing as close as I was to it, watching him just eliminate somebody. You don't want to see anybody get hurt. Arnold did leave practice after that, so you don't want to see that, obviously. But man, what a punishing blow from Thomas. And yeah, Daniel does need to learn. I mean, listen, but this is who he is. Like, he's not going to change. He's not going to change. He's going to go to the wall and go to the mat and, and then it's going to shake out how it shakes out. It's just who he is. H5000 says, assuming Saquon plays 15 to 17 games, how many yards from scrimmage does he get? Minimum and maximum. Ooh. Oh, that's tough, H5000. Let's go to Saquon's stats here. Well, one thing I'd be really interested in is how many touchdowns does he score, because we all know Jalen Hurts runs the ball a lot for the Eagles at the goal line. So Saquon's had 10 total touchdowns each of the last 2 years, 10 rushing, no receiving in 2022, and then 6 rushing and 4 receiving in 2023. Let's see. 2022, he had 295 carries for 1,300 yards, 1,312 yards, 10 touchdowns. And then he also had 57 catches for 338 yards and no touchdowns. 2 of the last three seasons, he's had 41 catches. And then obviously he had 91 his rookie year. I think Saquon goes, I would say it's possible he gets, in between the 60 and 70 range of catches. And then let's say I'm just saying if he's healthy, 15 to 17 games, like you said, I like him to go over 60 catches because the Eagles do believe he can do that, and they do want to emphasize that. Now, whether they can actually do it is another thing, but I'll give him over 60 catches, and I will also give him, let's see. So his best rushing totals were 1307 as a rookie, 1312 2 years ago was his best. And then he had another 1,003-yard season. So if he were healthy for that long and he were averaging, 4.5 yards a carry, 5 yards a carry, I think it's possible he ends up getting to. Now, this is like the top of what the Eagles are hoping for, but you could see him getting to 2,000 total yards from scrimmage, because in that sense, based on how they use him, you could, because remember in 2022, Daniel Jones ran a ton and Barkley still had almost 300 carries for 1,300 yards. So if he goes 1,500 rushing yards and then he has 65 catches, he could get to 500 receiving yards. So that's what I would say. Ballpark, I'd say 1,500 rushing yards, 65 catches, 500 and change yards. And then who knows the touchdown number, because Hurts runs in it a lot. But now, again, I'm just answering your question there of how many games, if he plays 15 of 17 games, that's what he could get. And that's what I think he would be capable of behind that offensive line in that offense. You asked me minimum, maximum. So I guess minimum, I would say, 1,300 yards in the games that you just gave me. And I would say, 45 catches, I guess, minimum. Hope JMS returns soon, no doubt. JDJ says Evan Neal seems to have had a setback. He did. He had a setback. Do you think there's a chance of him going down the road of Aaron Robinson, where he simply takes way longer to return than ever thought? Again, misdiagnosed injury, rehabbed incorrectly for a month, then had surgery. So now at this point, after the setback, who knows? I mean, Aaron Robinson, what was that? 3 years of waiting whether or not he was going to come back. I don't see those as the same thing. No, JDJ. John P says, play smart with Daniel Jones on Thursday. I think this was a miss in the Las Vegas Raiders game last year. He came out slinging cold. Put Daniel Jones out there to hand off twice and throw a screen pass just to get his legs under him. I would have no problem with that, John. I would have no problem with that. No snaps in bad weather, he says. Ray Ginsburg says, our new O-line coach brings 2 O-line starters. That's a good hire. Yeah, very common in the NFL for people to, stay with what they know, and especially if guys have produced for you. So that's what you want to do. And hopefully that works out for them. D-Kit says, Pat, did you get the impression that Daboll was overall pleased with today? You would think so. We didn't talk to him afterwards. I did gather from talking to some players, I feel like they were happy with their aggression and how they performed, but also didn't want to be that out of control when it came to all the fights. So that felt like the takeaway that was delivered to the players right after they came out to us, or right before they came out to us. So that's where they stand. We'll talk to Daboll before the second practice on Tuesday and get a fuller take. You can follow all of my updates on X and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, everywhere you get this info. D-Kid says, do you still feel they need to add a running back? Last pod, you were leaning that way. Also, if they add a player that isn't a camp body, which position do you think is most likely? D-Kid, I still think that they could use a downhill, like kind of between the tackles runner. It's possible they think Tracy can help them there as well. They obviously like Singletary. I do think they're going to throw the ball a lot, so maybe they think they can just get by with what they have. Turbo, Dante Miller is an interesting player for sure, but I just think they need some short yardage help. And yeah, I do still think they need like a short yardage back. So I don't know how that's coming, whether it's coming off waivers or a free agent, kind of a bargain free agent ad. But yes, I do still think they need that player. Haven't seen a lot of Jacob Sailor so far, kind of buried on the depth chart. Big Jim says Jerome Henderson, Rome, as he called him. That's right. Big Jim, you know him? That's what he goes by. Rome Henderson is considered a top DB coach in the NFL. How much can his coaching elevate these young bucks who all need to take a step in development this year? Flott, Hawkins, Belton, Holmes, etc. Well, it'll help them, but you don't have a magic wand. I mean, I would not be setting this up to be like a finger pointing exercise at Jerome Henderson if he can't turn players who are just okay or not any good into good players, right? I think out of the group you just listed, from most promising to least promising, I would go Belton, Flott, and then Hawkins and Holmes, same place. I mean, I don't think Hawkins or Holmes are going to be major factors. Maybe on special teams, Holmes can be a factor, but I think, Flott, we'll see. Don't think he's been the best. Don't think he's winning that job right now as we sit here now. Belton, obviously, good player in the role that he's been asked to do so far. Can he take the next step? Can he hold off Tyler Nubin? We'll see. Still don't mind him in that kind of third safety role, ball hawking role on third and longs. D-Kid says, are you leaning towards 6 wide receivers, 9 O-line, 3 tight ends, 4 running backs, and 2 QBs? Yeah, so the receivers would be Slayton, Neighbors, Wandale, Hyatt. I guess at this point, Hodgins is in that group there. I still wonder whether or not he sticks, but he does get in the end zone, which is something that the Giants need their players to do. So, and he's a vet, so that's a positive. I still think like a guy like Miles Boykin, who's not, you have him, and then you also have Gunnar Olszewski. Like Boykin's a special team vet. Gunnar Olszewski, of course, a wide receiver, also a return specialist. 9 linemen, you're saying. And I guess the guy who's interesting is Allen Robinson there. He's a vet. I'm not sure I see a scenario here with him on the roster coming off a cutdown day. But he's a guy who has a base level of reliability when he plays. But yeah, you can't keep everybody. And then 9 linemen. Geez. So I would say you have, right, let's say, if Neal and JMS are on the team, right, you have the starting 5 right now: Thomas, Runyon Jr., Van Roten, Aaron Stinney, and Jermaine Illuminor. And then you have Evan Neal and JMS, right? So you're looking at needing, in your scenario, you need a reserve guard there and then a swing tackle. Of course, that's what's tricky about this, like with Evan Neal on the roster, because is he really your swing tackle, right? The way that this is kind of built, like, I'm not sure that's something that you're asking him to do. I mean, Jake Kubis, to me, the undrafted rookie guard from North Dakota State, looks like a guy who could stick around for them. I think he's a player that if you're watching this first preseason game against Detroit, you should continue to watch. He sticks out, and then outside of that, I mean, it's tough. Schlotman, does he kind of bounce back, or Jimmy Morrissey? But yeah, kind of limited there. I actually think that there's probably an O lineman that makes this team that's not on the team yet, that they end up either signing or claiming off of a team's cuts, stuff like that. And then 4 running backs. Ooh, that feels like a lot. So Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and Turbo. Those are my running backs at the moment. That's just me. That's my running backs right now. Of course, Eric Gray's a draft pick, so I guess it's possible he could stick. But to me, I'm not keeping 4 running backs. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And if I am, I'm adding a guy who's more of a downhill runner. But 4 running backs feels like a lot, especially so think about this too. there is the kick return idea, like the kick return specialist. So if Turbo is a guy who makes the team, maybe that's how you get to 4 running backs, because he's also part of the kick returns. And then Eric Gray still on the roster as a draft pick. Eric Gray doesn't make my team here. But I know he's a draft pick and he's a second year player. So I guess it's possible he does. But to me, you need depth on special teams. You need coverage guys. Like a guy like Carter Coughlin is going to be on the roster, who is not going to play many, if any, defensive snaps. I don't think. I mean, he is profiling as a guy who, when he's healthy, has entered that rotation, but will he stick there? We'll see. Nas C says, how much has Andre Patterson been working with the pass rushers, Kayvon, Brian Burns, Aziz, etc.? They've been talking a lot about how he and Charlie Bowen have been collaborating. I think, he's the D-line coach, so he coaches the D-line, Patterson does. So really the interior are his guys. They've been working kind of collaboratively. Definitely kind of funny listening to all that window dressing about how much collaboration is occurring compared to last year. Because, of course, we know that the defense that tied for the highest amount of takeaways in the NFL, of course, there was so much wrong with it, right? Let's see. JDJ says, who do you think gets more snaps, the improving wide receiver of the future, Hyatt, or Slayton, who may not be a Giant next year? When I watch them on the field, it feels like Slayton. But, that'll be interesting. I think if the team has success early, it'll continue to be Slayton. And if the team doesn't have success early, it'll quickly be Hyatt, and Darius Slayton will be on another team. AJS says the secondary is so young, and with Bowen's zone scheme, have you seen many mistakes with assignments? I've seen mistakes. Even Deonte Banks, I talked to him after practice. He said, like, we did make some mistakes that were our mistakes. It wasn't like forced mistakes. It was ours. We have to correct them. But felt like overall it went well. But yeah, it's they are young. They are learning on the fly. It is a new scheme. It is a new system. And I think you're hitting on something interesting and important there, AJS, which is that, it's not just a different system. It's something that they're learning new here. And it's kind of like, kind of cramming for a test over these last several months, trying to get ready for week 1. So something to be expected, but also can't afford for it to be the case once you get to the season start. Big Jim says, last one, Pat, did we ever get your impression on these 100th year special edition jerseys? Who are we playing for that? If you remember the red jersey days from Old Stadium, not always a good thing. They're wearing them the first game against Minnesota. And I like the idea behind them. I think they're hideous. Obviously, honoring history is a part of how they are getting to, how are they going to frame this season, what's important for this season, what they want to emphasize, what they want to highlight. And, that's an important part of how they're going to operate. But boy, I mean, I think when you look at everybody's like genuine first reaction when they see them, like what did you think? No, I'm not a fan. I always say this. I love the pure red. I know that the Giants don't have a good history in them, but I love them. Heard a lot about the size of Theo Johnson, says Nasi. How would you describe it compared to other players? He looks like a basketball player, Nasi. He looks like an NBA power forward. And so let me test whether or not that's actually the case. So he is 6'6", 260. So of course in the NBA, that's more of like a small forward. But on the practice field, he looks like a basketball player. And funny enough, like Chris Manhurst is actually like a former standout college basketball player who ended up then playing football. So we all know, obviously, like tight ends tend to be also basketball players, are really good at basketball. No, I would say he's in shape, Nas, like he's big and imposing, but he's clearly in shape. Like he's physically, precocious, and he, they selected him because Darren Waller retired, but also the Daniel Bellinger pick has not blossomed into a surefire, like can't miss thing. Like they need to have other options there. D Kit says, I subscribe to the notion that our defensive scheme is very, very different than last year. I guess we will have to see how it goes, Pat. It is very different, D Kit. It is not a given it will go well. And we also don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I do feel like it's more predictable in that zone, trying to keep everything underneath, giving up plays, trying to avoid giving up the big play, relying on the 4-man pass rush to get there, but questions on how their run defense will be with that interior. And really, both edges are better pass rushers there than they are run defenders. And then also, as we saw against the Lions, a tendency to give things up big on the back end with a lot of youth. What I would like to see this season, if you're going to lose in style, says Asley. Identity of Giants should be an aggressive deep passes and strong shutdown defense. No doubt. And that's what I said. I think we talked last time about what are ways that this can go, how can the Giants have a losing season, but Joe Shane still, is on the up and up and the Giants feel like they're building? And it would be if they scored a lot of points and were losing a lot of close, high scoring games, right? Like you don't want to have a defense give up a ton of points. And obviously that wouldn't reflect on Brian Daboll well either, because you lost a defensive coordinator and then your defense got worse if that were the case. But, if they can turn into a high scoring modern NFL offense and Daniel Jones is clearly the guy, and Malik Neighbors is a stud, and, you have games you're losing 34-31 and that kind of stuff, you can at least hang your hat on something like that for sure. As you said, losing style. So, you don't want a bad losing season where you're just losing games all the time, even though you're scoring, but it would be an improvement over last year, 15 points per game. Big Jim says, thank you for the honesty. You got it. D Kid says, I thought when Shane was on the field trying to break up the fights, we were going to have another Jeff Van Gundy holding on to Alonzo Mourning's ankle episode. Great call, D Kid. Great reference to Jeff Van Gundy on the floor holding on to Zoe. Nasi says, so Draymond Green of Theo Johnson. Not as husky, but yeah. More like, who could I compare him to? I don't know. He's kind of like a towering dude. Trying to think. Javarius Owens always seems to make plays. Do you get the sense he'll make the team? Javarius Owens, will he make the team? That's a good question. I would say they need that corner depth. Their safeties are now 3 deep with Newbin, Belton, and Jason Pinnock. Elijah Riley did just go into the protocol, so maybe. I should say this too. I know I told you guys I was going to talk about the John Mara press conference, and I wanted to tell you guys my quick takeaways on that. And I thought Mara did not, put anybody on the hot seat then and there. I did think it was interesting that he did say he was very surprised Belichick was not hired, and he admitted he still thinks he can coach. But he stressed confidence in Daboll and in this process. He did, though, have some interesting comments. Obviously, we have to improve in a big way, or take a big step forward, I think is what he said. He said he needs to see significant improvement. He also said of the Saquon Barkley situation, you have to let them do their job. So you let them make the decision, especially if the coach and GM are on the page, and then you just bitch about it later, is what he said. That was really funny, kind of indicating, I let him do it, but if it doesn't work out, you're going to hear about it. That was pretty funny. Also interesting that he said vehemently that he still believes or still is glad that they gave Daniel Jones that contract. So he didn't want to hear anything about, is it a question whether or not they should have. He was kind of putting his foot down again, hell yes, we definitely, I would have done it again, essentially, is what he said. So the interesting there. But really, by and large, learned what we already knew, which is that John Mara expects a lot more from this team, and he's going to give them every chance. Shaky O-line, but he feels like he has confidence going to turn around. Also defended his nephew, Tim McDonald, in personnel high up in the Giants organization, saying he has a great reputation, in the scouting community as far as personnel evaluation, and that he doesn't like when he's questioned. I had asked about that because McDonald was featured so prominently in Hard Knocks. So those were a lot of my main takeaways there from John. But I do think it didn't change my opinion that a lot of pressure on the GM and coach this year. But also, obviously, Mara is saying all the right things about trying to give them the best opportunity here. Yes, AJS, I did see Colin Johnson, former Giant, get 2 touchdowns in the first preseason game. Hope he makes it with the Bears. That was really exciting to see. Colin's a great guy, hard worker, really good player. Hope he makes it as well. That was encouraging. D-Kit says, Pat, last comment, at least for me, I was encouraged by Monday's practice. First time in a long time. I agree, D-Kit. I hope it lasts past Tuesday. Me too. Best podcast in 52 states. Thanks, Pat. Thank you, D-Kit. And thank you to everybody who has participated in this 2-hour Talkin Ball Live. Remember, we are sponsored by Boom Chaga. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink is a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. Personally, I have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 right here, or you access it through the QR code on your screen, you will get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. And when you do subscribe and save for Boom Chaga, you do it, you get the discount, and you can cancel it out if you want. No harm done, no like commitment past the first month and first purchase. Right now, that means only $30 for a month's supply of Boom Chaga. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Also sponsored by Bet Online and by Estate 98 Coffee, an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar that is convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced coffee and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte from this all-natural concentrate. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. estate98.com/talkinball. There is the link if you guys are interested. Nas says, agree with D-Kit. The practice doesn't indicate season success, but it shows the dog that we have seemed to lack for years. I hope so. Nas, that's a good way of saying it. You hope that is the case. D-Kit says, by the way, did you see Nathan Rourke was picked up by the Falcons? Yeah, man. How many quarterbacks do they need in Atlanta? I mean, poor Nathan Rourke. He definitely doesn't have an opportunity to play there, right? Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr., but we'll see. Never got a chance here to compete with Tommy DeVito. I thought could have easily ended up being better than Tommy. Tommy right now is not on my 53 man. He would be cut, practice squatted, and kept in the building. I do think based on where their team is, they can't afford to keep 3 quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Big Jim says, do you think Aaron Rodgers has some of your Boom Chaga mushrooms? No, he takes mushrooms, but not this kind. This kind is immune boosting, beta glutens, antioxidants. Rodgers, I think, travels to another place with the mushrooms that he partakes in. No judgment there. D-Kit with a testimonial. So D-Kit bought Boom Chaga and tried it out. And here's D-Kit saying, Boom Chaga gives a kick, by the way. It's good, right? Right? I got to admit, any kind of new product that's not part of my daily routine, I'm skeptical too, D-Kit. And so I felt the same way, took it and thought, oh, wow. Right? It was almost like I didn't even want anybody to tell me what it would do because I wanted to see genuinely how it would feel for me. And so I appreciate you saying that, D-Kit. Checks in the mail. No, just kidding. But no, I really appreciate that, you purchasing it and you giving that testimonial. Boomchaga.com, guys. Talkin Ball 25 or the QR code on your screen. That'll get you that discount, 25% off a subscribe and save order. And you don't have to stay subscribe and save. You just buy it on the subscribe and save discount, and then you can cancel it out if you want, or stay subscribed, whatever. But thank you for saying that, D-Kit. I don't know if DeVito makes it on practice squad. He might get picked up, says Evan. I don't know why that would happen, Evan, to be honest with you, unless he finagled his way out because he didn't like the fact that he wasn't given enough of a chance and he wasn't back on the roster. I personally think the Giants are going to try to keep him around because if the season goes in the toilet again, he's a fan favorite. I mean, it's very interesting. The other day, I'll leave you guys with this. The other day at practice, like the three quarterbacks walked by the fans closer to where they are. And it was kind of a quieter, slower practice on Sunday as they geared up for joint practices on Monday against the Lions. And there wasn't much going on in this practice, but the one charge that came out of the fans was as Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito walked by, who do you think the fans were yelling for? The third string quarterback, Tommy DeVito, right? Isn't that funny? That's how he resonates, man. Big Jim says, D-Kid, I've never met you, man, but your commitment in the chat tonight is inspiring. I think I've got to go boom chaga from now on. Try it, Big Jim. I think you'll love it. And D-Kid is the man. D-Kid is a huge supporter of Talkin Ball Live. Really appreciate that. Yeah, D-Kid says, I try not to miss this pod. No one should, honestly. We should, listen, this is only going to get better. Anybody who's new here, remember, we do Talkin Ball Lives after every Giants game from the press box, home and away. So I'm glad you mentioned this, Big Jim and D-Kid. So this Thursday, Giants Lions, MetLife Stadium. After the game, I'll come out of the locker room, I write for the Daily News, and then I go live with you here on YouTube. PL on NFL, the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard YouTube channel. And I will dissect what I saw on the field. Who looked good? Who didn't? Stock up, stock down, right? What did guys say in the locker room? Injury updates, talking to Brian Daboll, talking to players in the room, getting to download on what we saw, giving you clarity on questions you have, forecasting where we go from there as we head into the second game week of the preseason against the Houston Texans, and on we go. Mondays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, or post-game, as we're going to see this Sunday or this Thursday after the Lions game. So that's going to be our next Talkin Ball Live. Thursday night after the Giants-Lions game. Once I come out of the locker room, I'll keep you guys updated on X. Follow me, PLeonardNYDN on X. And that's when I will announce when I'm definitely going live. That's when you will see it. Or if you don't have notifications set up already on the channel here, turn on your notifications. And so you will, on your phone, you will get a sharp looking message from YouTube. I can't take credit for creating it. YouTube does. You get a sharp looking message that's going to say Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard is now going live, and it'll let you know. So, if you got to finish watching the game, put the kids to bed, do whatever it is, maybe you're working the overnight shift. I don't know. Everybody's got a different deal, but it'll kind of keep you engaged and let you know when I'm going live to talk about it. JDJ says, do you think Daniel Jones and the rest of the starters only play one series in the preseason, most likely the second game? Yeah, that's a good question, JDJ. We've asked Brian Daboll about that. We've asked Daniel Jones about it. We're trying to get our hands on exactly how that's going to go. I will say this. They've done a lot of things differently this offseason, finally, compared to what they did, last 2 years, especially last year. And I think some of the stuff is pointed in the right direction. So maybe they do give these guys some game reps to get them ready. Because the fact of the matter is, week one against the Vikings, they have to be ready. And Welvin, I apologize. I skipped over your question about week one. Week one prediction against the Vikings. Too early for me for a final prediction there, Welvin. I would say, when the schedule came out, I predicted them to lose that game, and I predicted them to win 4 games. Let's do this again as we get closer to the regular season in week one, and we'll do it officially. We'll go week by week, and I'll predict it. So that's what I would say. I will say this, Welvin, a forecast for the Vikings game. Do I think the Giants defense is going to stop the Vikings skill group? Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison? No, I do not. But will their pass rush be able to fluster a quarterback room that includes Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy, whoever's playing in that game? Yeah, that's possible. So, like, I think the Vikings will score points, but the Giants might make some plays on at this point, mid quarterback room, right? Now, as far as how they do against the Vikings defense, I mean, Brian Flores, that's going to be a very interesting matchup. The Vikings defense is better than the one that the Giants faced, 2 years ago in the playoffs and in Minnesota. So, I think it's going to be a tight game at the very least. I mean, the Giants aren't going to win it easily. That's for sure. They're two teams in similar spots as far as expectations go this season. So, let's see. What else do we have here? So that's what I could say right now. I picked them initially to lose the game. I mean, that's where I stand at the moment. But like right now, like we're in the thick of the Giants working to improve, looking better, having a really encouraging day against the Detroit Lions here at joint practice. So I'll get to that week 1 prediction though in due time for sure. Welvin, good question. I will say this. I think you got to win that game. You definitely at least have to go 1-1 between that game and Washington for sure. I'm thinking about going to that Washington Jets game on Saturday night too. I'm not going to lie. Jaden Daniels playing. I'm kind of interested to see him play, but we'll see about that. For sure, KB says you guys were cooking Dayball the other day with the Evan Neal questions. Well, it's just kind of like we haven't talked to him about it in a while since the start of camp. And it was time for an update because it really is so murky. D-Kit says one thing as this pod has become more popular for obvious reasons, we have lost a lot of the trolls. It's filled with real Giants fans who want real insight. Pat has hit it with this pod. Support it. Thanks, D-Kit. Thank you so much. Really, I really appreciate you. Bill says, I'll just be happy if we come out of the preseason without injuries. Thanks for the show, Pat. Amen on both counts there, Bill. Do you think McLeod will end up taking the corner 2 spot over Flott, says for sure KB. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. At this moment, I think he's a better cover corner. JDJ says, great live tonight. I'm sure all of us obsessed Giants fans appreciate you taking time out to answer all of our questions. I love doing this too, JDJ. Really appreciate it. So remember, subscribe, turn on notifications. We do have more special guests coming on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. Check out my interviews with Rich Salgado, Willie Colon, Jeremy Fowler from ESPN recently. I was also on the Carton Show recently on FS1. Check me out there. That hit went really well the other day. That was fun. And, what we're doing is continuing to build here at the New York Daily News. You can follow all my coverage there, nydailynews.com/sports, all my Giants coverage, all my NFL coverage, and also on social media, P Leonard NYDN on X and everywhere else, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, PL on NFL. This is the Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard podcast. You guys make it go. Thank you so much for a great 2 hours plus here. Remember, next time I see you guys, check the channel for podcast interviews and more content. But if I don't see you before then, stop back here for Thursday night, Giants, Detroit Lions, MetLife Stadium. So that's August 8th, Thursday night, Giants Lions, preseason game number 1, preseason opener. After the game, tune in, whether you're in your car driving home from the stadium, or you're at home, or you're at work, whatever the case may be, tune in and we will go live. I will go live from the Giants press box after coming out of the locker room and Brian Daboll's press conference to tell you all about what the players said, what I heard, what I saw, injury updates, and everything. Also look for our arrival videos starting for this game as well. That's something that I love doing. Rival videos brought to you by Sal Loretta. I get dressed up, the players get dressed up, and of course, you're always going to see me first on the videos. So that's my favorite part. I know everybody loves that as well. Tongue-in-cheek stuff, but it's a lot of fun. JDJ says, I heard they got an opening over there at FS1. Let's go, Pat. That's right, JDJ. Thanks, Pat, for all the insight, and I look forward to Thursday's show, AJS says. Thank you. Thank you to everybody listening on Apple and Spotify if you're checking in on audio. This has been Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, Believe Network, Talkin Ball Live. See you guys next time. Thank you so much.